If you've left or you're leaving a relationship where coercive control was the air you breathed, there's one fear that usually sits above every other if you've got kids, and that is the kids. You may be worrying, will they do it to them, what they did to me? Or how do I protect them when the court says that they have to live with them? What do I say when they come home and repeat their version of events, or worse, when they start to side with them? Unfortunately, when it comes to coercive control and co-parenting, it can be a big problem. So today, we're going to be answering the many questions that were sent in about coercive control and co-parenting and your biggest worries. Welcome back, Krasi, and welcome back, Mum.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Lynn.
Good morning, Krasi.
So,
Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
this is obviously part 4 of our 6-part series on coercive control. And today we're going to be talking about coercive control, children, and co-parenting with an accredited family law specialist with over 35 years' experience, Mum, on Lynn, and also with Krasi Kirova, psychologist with lots of experience and a special interest in helping people get through these kind of situations daily.
And a clinical psychologist at that.
Yes. We've already talked about financial abuse, being separated under one roof with coercive control, and what is coercive control. But today we are going to be focusing on, I would think, pretty much everyone's worst nightmare is the kids and their experience with coercive control. And hopefully through today's discussion, people will walk away with some strategies, maybe feeling a little bit better about what they can do, and at least a little bit of sense of hope that their kids are going to be okay. But we're not going to sugarcoat it. So let's get into the questions because there are plenty. So we're going to have to move fast. The first question we're going to answer is from, again, these people's names aren't their real names. They are pseudonyms, so you won't know who they actually are. And the questions have been slightly altered, so you can't identify them. But this question is from Lean. And she says, how does coercive control affect children, including adult children? And why do some children recognize the abuse while others seem to align or defend the controlling parent? So, Kraz, I think this is perfect for you to answer. And I think this is literally the worry that goes through most people's heads with this kind of X. How does it affect kids?
Yeah, it's a huge question, isn't it? And I do want to give it the proper time to talk about it. I do want to make one caveat as well in the beginning that I'm not a child psychologist. I work with adults, but I guess in my work with complex trauma and childhood trauma, very often you could say I work with the grown-up adults who were the children who experienced all of it. The way coercive control impacts children varies on so many factors. I mean, it wouldn't be fair to say that it impacts everyone in the same way because there's so many different types and levels of abuse strategies, so that would matter. There is also a presence or lack of many protective strategies that may be within the family. Then there's children's own inner resources, which really will vary according to different people. There is the overall environment outside of the family. Is there also financial stress? Is there secure housing? What about their school? All of that. How long do they have contact with the abuser? It's one thing when they are spending the majority of the time versus a couple of hours a week. So many different factors will play and no situation will look the same. But it has been clearly shown at this point by various research that children that have grown up and live in families where there is infrequent or absent physical violence, but there has been coercive control, they pretty much experience the same negative impacts as those who have lived with frequent or severe physical violence. So the presence or the absence of physical violence is not a defining factor of the harm that is being caused. It really is the regime of coercive control that's causing the harm. And those pathways to non-direct harm, again, are so varied. And they could be even things which don't from the outside don't seem to directly be targeted at the children. So, for example, what has been identified as a very significant factor is the fact that a coercive controller will absolutely monopolize the mother's time and attention at the expense of the children. So again, on the outside, it's easy to say, but they're not doing anything directly to the children. But what they're doing to the mother is going to have a huge impact on how she can parent and how she can pay attention to those children. Also, the limited freedom that is being created in the household is going to have a huge impact on the children. And also what they can say or cannot say or do within the house. And very often as a way to avoid the abuse, kids will shut down. They will not say certain things. They will avoid doing certain stuff. And very often there are very real restrictions on children's social lives and movements as well. So all of these factors are going to be individual, but have an impact. And I would say the impact on children can be very similar to the impact that the other abused parent is experiencing. So they're going to live with a sense of fear. They're going to have hypervigilance. Their nervous system is going to be really highly wired. And we know that the earlier onset of this hyperarousal and hypervigilance for children, the more prolonged effect it has throughout life. Early nervous systems are a lot more malleable and sensible, and the way they get wired early on in life tends to really continue on for a very long time. Children will experience trauma symptoms. They can have flashbacks as well. They can have symptoms of anxiety, depression, panic attacks. They can employ different coping strategies, such as angry outbursts or strong people-pleasing tendencies. They'll have difficulty with their self-esteem, difficulty with establishing autonomy. So again, very similar to what their parent may be experiencing as well as the impact. I think for children, it may present a lot more through physical symptoms as well. They don't have the words, they don't have the ability quite often to talk about anxiety, but they will talk about a sore tummy, they will talk about feeling sick or feeling nauseous. So that's how they express it. And I think adult children may appear a lot less impacted because, of course, by that time they have a lot more freedom to move away from the abuser and from the overall family environment. They have a much greater understanding and clarity about what's been happening. They have a lot more effective coping strategies, usually by the time they grow up, and they have a wider social network. So the way younger children are impacted is different than the way the impact will continue as they grow older.
I see people going, why can't my kids see when they worry about this? Why can't my kids see what they're doing? This is obviously some sort of control, and I wish my kids could see it. I wish my kids could understand it. But then I think I realize now, maybe through talking with you in the past, Krasi, it took you a while to figure it out. Like if you're listening today and you were in a coercive controlling relationship for, 20 years, and you only realized it in the last 10, or the last 2, you've got to cut your kids some slack. They're younger, they're littler, even if they're adults. Like it took you a while to figure it out. It's probably going to take them some time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there are 2 factors here that are very important, and I think it really matters for parents to understand the why. So one is absolutely what you were saying. If we think about how long it takes a victim survivor to realize and to have clarity that they're experiencing abuse, it takes a very long time. That is the nature of abuse, that it conceals itself and it uses a lot of manipulation. And children are not any different in that regard. They'll be struggling exactly in the same way to identify what's happening. But an even more important factor is, and this is from a psychological perspective, not seeing the abuse is absolutely a survival strategy. Because when you see abuse, you have to do something about it. There is a huge cost to seeing abuse and to responding to abuse. And we have to remember, evolutionary, every human being is wired to maintain attachment at any cost. A child, evolutionary, is wired to preserve the attachment with a caregiver, even when it harms them. And it's very difficult and dangerous even to acknowledge that the person who's supposed to look after you and care for you is also the person who harms you. So when a child is presented with that dilemma, then in almost all cases, a child first and foremost will self-sacrifice themselves. They'll retreat from themselves rather than lose the attachment relationship. They cannot be caught in this loyalty bind that feels unsafe as well. So children are much more likely to denounce or reject themselves, or even the safe parent, than to denounce and reject an abusive parent. And very often they know they're unsafe. They know they're being mistreated, but they don't have the deeper explanation or the clarity or even the power to do anything about it until much later on in life. So it's not even a choice that they're making consciously. It's not that they're not seeing it. They have to survive. They have to not see it in order to maintain what is a vital attachment for them.
Oh, cool kitties. Mum, does the court recognise the effects of coercive control on children?
Yes, it does. It looks at the impact on the kids, and it is it's in the definition of what is coercive control. And it is the first factor in Section 60, I think, CC, that the court will look at, the family violence. What I was thinking as you talked, Krasi, was that it is definitely intergenerational, because those children who've grown up like that, they don't intimately know other people's homes and how they live. So this is the only model they have. And particularly if you can't bring people to your house because your dad might blow up or something. And so it's really important that we all try to sort of help our children out of it. And it's often the adult children who will tell the parent who's being abused, sometimes way after they've left home, Mum, why don't you just leave? Why do you let Dad get away with that? The court uses family reports to inform them about the children's wishes. And there is a big problem with that. When I listen to you, Krasi, and saying that the children won't report it or underreport it. So a different version of them shows up for the family report.
Yes, and even more problematic, and I also have a lot of problems with how a lot of family reports are doing their assessments for a few reasons. Not only are they seeing the phoning, the people-pleasing sort of survival strategies from children, and they're interpreting that as a loving, safe relationship with a parent when that couldn't be further from the truth. But also they're doing very significant assumptions and very significant evaluations of the nature of a whole relationship based on what is very often only a 30-minute observation of a child with a parent, that is completely inadequate to evaluate any kind of quality of a relationship. So I think there is a big problem in how these relationships are being genuinely evaluated.
So the hope there is that they're looking at the Section 60cc best interests of the children, and family violence is a factor. So the hope is that if someone was going to court, that they would look at that. But the problem is you're saying that the only way to find out if the children are being subjected to it, apart from the parents saying it's happening, is the children saying it. And unfortunately, the children are highly unlikely to say it. What about for court, Mum? How do we get that across to court? You can help them in the meantime, but how do you get the court to know, hey, there's family violence and it's happening to the children? Because I sometimes do feel, and I know we're going off script here, but yeah, sure, if they were being physically violent to you, then the kids don't get sent. But if it's coercive control, then for some reason it does seem like they're sending the kids.
You have to, in your documents, in your affidavit and in your applications to the court, I think you need to name the coercive control. The children may not see it, and I don't think the court requires the children to see it. In the family reports, like if you can set out actual things that happened when you were together, like hogging all of your attention so you couldn't tend to the children, that sort of thing where they're half-hearted about the children or jealous of the children. If you can put examples of that in your affidavit, because you don't know what happens at their house. Once you're separated, you can only rely on before and after and what happened in the past. And I think you've just got to tell your story, because people tell us things and then they go, I don't know how to put that in an affidavit. You just did. That's what you need to do. Say these things. And hopefully the court is becoming more and more informed about coercive control.
Let's get to the next question.
Okay.
And these questions are actually about the messenger situation where the kids are becoming messengers. So we've got a question from Anonymous and Gemma. How do I educate my children, this is Anonymous, to their own feelings and emotions? I notice that at times they become ambivalent and reactive when their father uses them as messengers to get revenge on me. I hope he would only target me and not the children. And then Gemma's question, which is similar, was what skills or language can we give young kids around 5 to 9 to help protect them from coercive control in a way that is safe, age appropriate, and doesn't make them feel responsible for managing an adult's behaviour? Krasi?
I think these questions go at the heart of what we're talking today. So I'm going to, again, take my time in answering it because I really think it's so important for any protective parent. So if we start from the beginning in terms of why do we need to even be protecting them? One of the most consistent traits of a coercive controller is their egocentricity and selfishness. That's always present. That's a given. And that is particularly in line with the people they're meant to love and care for. So what that means is that their children are seen as an extension of themselves and they need to serve them, not the other way around. It's not the parent that needs to be in service of the children. It's the children that needs to be in service of the parent. They need to agree with them. They always need to adore them. They never need to question them or inconvenience them. And so there is a huge cost to children because of that. Children will start editing themselves. They will suppress or conceal their feelings and thoughts because they don't want to have a negative reaction. They don't want to inconvenience. They'll really start presenting a very acceptable version of themselves and their needs, and they'll really learn not to ask or speak up. And what is the job of a parent? I mean, the job of a parent is to be a safe figure that provides unconditional love, acceptance, wisdom, support, that sets healthy limits and age-appropriate expectations. So I think in these situations, being a protective parent is like doing double duty as a parent because you're doing the duty of you and the other abusive parent because they're not doing their duty. So not only are you doing that double duty, but on top of it, you're actively trying to undo the harm that the other parent is causing. So parenting is hard at the best of times. We know that. It's like climbing a mountain on the good days. But when you have an abusive co-parent, then it feels like you're climbing up that mountain and there is a huge snowstorm just blowing in your face the whole time. That's what it feels like. So the things we want to provide as parents become even more high stakes. It feels even more important that we can do a good job. We're not just providing now our children with the life skills to get through life, but also we are trying to build them an armor that's going to buffer them against the harm they're experiencing. And in a way, I think the protective parent needs to almost become like a trauma-informed therapist in their own home, because this is literally what they're dealing with. So first, I do want to give recognition and praise to every parent that is active protectively towards their children, because your efforts may not be recognized by other professionals or people on the outside, as we were just talking. But I know what heroic efforts it takes and what you put in every single day and the cost you pay for it. So while you can't prevent what an abusive person does, you can absolutely buffer or protect your children very significantly against that. So when we get to the how do we do that as a protective parent, I really want to highlight the work of Dr. Emma Katz. I think maybe a few of our listeners know her. She's a UK researcher. She's done such amazing research in the area of coercive control in children's and mothers' lives. She's written a book. She also has an amazing Substack. So if you just Google her name, and I think we can link it in the show notes, there's some golden information there. But in a nutshell, what she has as a roadmap to protecting your children is she says your best protection is to create at your own home and within your own behavior the kind of environment that is the opposite of the coercive control regime they're experiencing in the other home. So what I mean by that is, if an abusive parent is ignoring or dismissing children's feelings, then in your house, feelings are going to be named and they're going to be considered. If in the other home they are hearing mean words and there's selfishness being done, then in your home, you're going to teach empathy and you're going to show kindness. If their physical needs are being ignored in the other home, then in your home, physical needs are going to be important and considered and given consideration. If choices and freedom is being squashed by the coercively controlling parent, then in your home, you're going to encourage autonomy. You're going to celebrate choices and they will be allowed as well. If there is lack of structure and routine in the other home, then it becomes even more important that you do have that routine and structure. If children are being expected to perform adult duties by the coercive controller, then in your home, they're going to be allowed to have fun, to play, to have age-appropriate expectations, and parental responsibility will be key. So you want to take stock of what is not being done or what is being done wrong in the other house and you want to make sure that you're countering it with a very different way of parenting in your own home. So this is that intentional effort about naming and respecting feelings as well, because they become children's compass later on in life. If we can't name it and we can't understand it, we don't know where we are going really. So teaching children, for example, is not just about the things you say to them. You don't just teach children by the things you tell them. You also teach them by the way you treat them, by what you demonstrate through your own behavior, by the discussions you're having together, even when you're watching a TV series or you're sitting down and cuddling at night. What you normalize in your house, what you reward and what you don't, all of these are teaching moments. It's not like you sit down and you just teach. And I think as a protective parent, you're probably already teaching them a lot more than you recognize or you think you are. But again, it's about creating that atmosphere where feelings are being permitted, they're freely expressed. We learn to start providing the language and the words to our children for those feelings so they can recognize them. And there's some really good books, and we'll talk about it, I know, a little bit later, that you can use as well. Children are really allowed and encouraged to speak up and express themselves. We demonstrate that we are listening to them and we are responding accordingly. And as parents, that we can acknowledge mistakes, we can apologize as well, because that's exactly the opposite of what I know a coercive parent is going to do. They would never apologize. They would never own a mistake for anything. It's also about teaching children certain emotion regulation strategies. Just as a very quick example, a very simple one for young children is teach them breathe in like you're smelling a flower and then breathe out as you're blowing a candle. Right? So it's just such a simple way, but it teaches them a regulation strategy. It's also about sometimes you might role play certain situations. I was recently talking with a client of mine, and she had such a good example of when the child was a 6-year-old child, and she was feeling quite confused and uncomfortable because the other parent was teaching her and telling her certain things. And I think coaching her in preparation for maybe a family report assessment. And the child didn't feel good about this. So the mom just said, you know what, let's just role play a little bit about when someone asks you something you don't really want to do, what you can say. And it doesn't matter who it is. And so they kind of role played for about half an hour how the little girl could just say, I don't want to talk about it. And she felt so good by the end. And she felt, I feel much more confident now.
Yes.
And so that's how you can also do it.
Oh.
And also, I think the other important thing is to over and over tell them clearly as a parent what you carry the responsibility for, and that this is not your responsibility. Keep repeating it to them, because a coercive controller is all about abdicating any responsibility and putting it all on everyone else. I have heard awful examples where a coercive controller will say to their children, it's because of you I'm feeling so horrible, and it's because of you I have to take this antidepressant medication. It's because you don't come often enough. This is more common than you would think.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yes, you have to call me every single day when you're not around, because otherwise you might not find me alive next time you come. That's something I have heard being said.
Poor little kids.
As the protective parent, over and over, you reinforce the idea that you're the child. You do not carry responsibility for me. I've got this. I've got my support system. I'm here to take care of you.
Wow. And look, there were so many gems in there that I think people could take away from this. We might even do a little fact sheet from Krasi of what she's mentioned today, some dot points that you can take away. And it breaks my heart that you have to help maybe like a little child sit down like a Gemma's daughter, teach them role-playing on how to be assertive in any situation, because you do see this with those children that they're pushed down, squished down, and then that can filter into their lives at school, everywhere. Yes. But the thing I've noticed, Krasi, with everything you've just said, it is the complete opposite to what we're told to do for co-parenting. With co-parenting, They say, make sure you have similar routine times. Try and do, the same rules so that the kids' transition is okay and smoother, because the rules at one house is the same at the other. But what you're saying in this situation, if you've got a coercive controlling type who is trying to just control everything, squish them down, you try and do the extreme opposite. So if they control everything they eat and they have to like only eat what's given to them and they have to ask and beg, then at your house, you should just let them eat whatever they want. Let them choose dinner, let them choose lunch, let them get
within
in there.
reasonable limits. But yes, I want to make the very important point, Laura, that these suggestions and advice for co-parenting was done with the presumption that both parents are healthy, responsible parents. They weren't done with the presumption that there is a coercive controlling regime in the family, just like couples therapy was invented with the presumption that you have two equal partners in this relationship. And so we have to take into consideration what is the reality.
And I think as high as nearly 80% of cases about children in the family court end up with coercive control, family violence in them. And a lot of it is coercive control. Yeah. Because I think people know that if they hit another person, that could be cataclysmic. But sneaky coercive control over time can really protect them from that. And until now, I think people thought it wasn't going to be known. And I think in your house, you've got to try for the kids, this is just from my experience as a mother and step-parent and stuff, make your house non-porous so that their behaviours don't get into your house. Your home is a home of love. And if that means you've got to do the driving to pick them up and all of those things, those are things you can do. Yeah.
So, Mum, I just want to check with you because I do know that they're looked at, and I have seen this strategy by some coercive controlling cases that we've seen, where if the other parent does the opposite of what the other parent is doing, like Krasi is suggesting, then they pull out the alienation card and say that she or he's alienating my children because they allow the kid to do whatever they want. Like, I just want to put that out there. Do you see that? And how can you counter that to make sure that you're protecting your kids, you're creating them safety from coercive control, but also if you're going through the family court, you're not getting accused of alienation?
Well, the court has never really interfered with the day-to-day care of children when they're in a parent's care, except when they started to have to cooperate for doctors and things like that. So I don't think a person alleging that you allow the kids more screen time and you bribe them with things and make their life. I've always said bribery works. If they're feeling terrible, just help them feel better. But the alienation allegations come when the mother usually is suspected or accused of bad-mouthing the ex. And it's got to be a lot more direct than just having a different lifestyle. The court won't get involved. It's got to be the rubbishing the other parent.
What I have seen is that the alienation claims come very often when the children start resisting going to that place, which, if we think about it, resistance is the most healthy, normal coping response when you're being harmed and abused, right? When they start recognizing that what is happening is harmful, they start resisting going and seeing the person who is harming them. And that's when the alienation card very often becomes played, and it becomes the explanation for the children's resistance, which
it's a counter. It's a counter accusation against you, and it's really hard to disprove, I guess, either way. But I think the opposite of alienation as an explanation for the children resisting, the opposite of that is the children's lived experience. And so, if you're doing affidavits or anything presenting to the court, put down the things that the children have had to go through, and hopefully, if you set it out properly, a court will see, well, hang on a minute, it's not alien. Look at all these things you've done. Are they supposed to just ignore that?
And if the coercive controlling parent is reaching into your house, Krasi, and trying to now going, well, I'm doing this, I want you to do that at your house as well, and they start sending messages, complaints, epic long messages about how bad you are as a parent and you need to change or you're going to be dobbed into the court. Mum, you're saying the court doesn't look at that. No. They don't care what you technically do day-to-day parenting. They try not to get involved in that. So, Krasi, how do people then lock that out and not let it affect them?
I just say one simple word, ignore. Keep ignoring. They almost always do it. So it's almost a given they'll do it. They'll try to exercise control in any way possible. So when they see they're starting to slip some control, or when they're trying to really paint themselves as this amazing, responsible and involved parent, that's when they start bombarding with messages about ridiculous things, as into the whoever's toenails weren't clipped, when was the last time you did it, or when did you last wash her hair, just ridiculous things like that. It has no weight in court, I think. What Lynn is saying, I think those everyday kind of little sort of home rituals have no bearance. I don't think the court even looks at these things and just ignore.
So you've got to try and, if you have been in a coercive controlling relationship, those words to you sound terrifying and you're worried and you think, these people think, oh my goodness, I'm going to be in trouble. This is horrible. I am a bad mother or a bad father. So you've got to remind yourself, guys, the court's not going to care two hoots if you didn't clip their toenails for 2 weeks. You've got to be aware that it's easy for us to say ignore it. It's going to be harder for you because you've been in that kind of relationship. You've got to teach yourself how to filter that out and keep that, like Mum said, keep your house non-porous. Don't let them seep into your house.
One little thing, a way that you can explain away that allegation of alienation with the day-to-day things is to say, I let the children use their iPads because in the other house they can't. And you just create that parallel and that you are creating a counterbalance for what's going on.
Is it Section 61 DAB, Mum?
Yes, I think it is.
The DAB.
The DAB, 61 DAB, yeah.
That can be your defence, guys. You can just send 61 DAB where it says something about the court doesn't get it. You're the parent that the children are with are allowed to make day-to-day decisions.
Yes.
So every time they send you that, just look at that again and remind yourself every time. Okay, let's get into Sunshine's question. Krasi, hopefully I can get you to answer this one. How do you equip your children, especially tweens and teens, to understand the dynamic of coercive control, especially the confusing strategies such as manipulation? For example, the father says, you have to leave your birthday party early because your mother wants you home at 3 p.m. Oh, fact, the mother wasn't aware of the birthday party in question and no discussion had occurred about the change of drop-off time. So in other words, I guess if the father had actually just told the mother there's a birthday party, I'm sure the mum would have said, sure, you can stay a bit longer, but they're using it. Example 2, father saying, you're not intolerant to dairy, your mum is just being dramatic. Fact, the children regularly vomit due to dairy consumption. And then example 3, you have to earn money to buy a bike or a scooter at my house as your mother won't let you bring it here. How do you teach them what misinformation looks like without denigrating so that they are not confused or doubt the safe parent? Or do you just leave it alone and hope that they work it out one day? Oh, what a good question. And oh my gosh, Sunshine, I hope that's not happening to you, but if it is, holy moly, it's terrible.
I think it is quite a common situation, and what is being described here is exactly manipulation. It's manipulation from the other parent that is being presented in the form of misinformation. It can look like misinformation, but it's very intentional and it has a very particular goal to achieve. So it is manipulation. I think the milk example specifically with the dairy and the intolerance, that is a great example of what I mentioned last time, that term spiteful disregard, which is that intentional aim to set up the other parent and undermine their parenting, in the process harming the child, completely disregarding what the child needs because that is more important. And this kind of spiteful disregard really causes harm to the children, either directly or indirectly as well. But going back to the question, I would say rather than teaching children about misinformation or what are coercive control strategies and so on, the best antidote in these kind of situations is just providing the children with accurate information and keeping very open communication with them. You don't need to explain to them what, let's say, their father is doing and why he's doing it. You just simply need to correct every time. So you can say, well, that is actually inaccurate. When, for example, in this example, the father was saying, well, your mother didn't want you to go to the birthday party or whatever, you can say to the children later on when they're in your care, well, that is actually inaccurate. I simply wasn't aware of what had happened. So just give them that explanation. Don't get caught up in musings as to why the other parent is doing these things. They don't need to hear that stuff. But also don't gloss it over. Don't let it go. Don't ignore it. Just correct it every time, because it's very important as a protective parent to be able to cut through those manipulations that are constantly coming on the other side. Again, you don't need to name them and point them out, but you need to cut through the confusion and the disruption they're trying to create. So keep addressing it, keep speaking back to that. So again, you can have simple explanations such as, well, we do things differently in both homes. Or sometimes it's very difficult to have good communication with your father. We can say that. You can explain to them the reason for certain decisions you make. For example, if you don't allow them to watch something, or if you're not going to buy them a scooter because maybe you don't have the money for it, not because you're wanting to pinch off your children's kind of savings. You can explain that very reasonably, calmly. And children at that age, they will be able to hear these things. They can understand a lot more also than what is being openly said to them. So in time, I think they will make up very clearly their mind about who's trying to undermine and who's trying to be respectful and keep open communication with them.
I guess the vibe the family court gives is don't say anything, don't get them involved, don't mention anything. But what you're saying, correct the record.
You need to correct the misinformation, and that's not involving them in any way. I mean, when it's inaccurate information, it is inaccurate information. When there is a particular explanation as to why you're making certain decisions in your own home, communicate that clearly.
Yeah.
This is what good parenting is, open, clear communication. It doesn't have to be about the other side and the other person, but it has to be about why you're doing the parenting decisions you're doing. And it does have to correct obvious misinformation. That is important as a counter to a coercive control regime.
Wow. And it's important, Laura and Krasi, too, when a child goes to a family report and they are still under misapprehensions about the facts and it hasn't been shown to them or told to them that was inaccurate, then that is the vibe they take into the family report as well. So if you've given them the benefit of actual facts, they might say, oh, we had to leave the party early. Dad said Mum wouldn't let us stay. But Mum said she didn't know about it. So you can sort of protect yourself a little bit about it. Yeah.
Okay. So I've just figured something out.
What have you figured?
I've heard people saying this to us in our member Q&As. Oh, this, the dad said this or the mum said this and I corrected it. And then the coercive controlling parent then messages the other parent when the kids go back, you've been talking to the children about adult matters. So it's like they're trying to, They're trying to just keep you to shut up so that they can continue to mess with their heads and change the story, distort the 3Ds.
Yeah.
Right. So anyone who's listening who's too afraid of that, or if their ex says you keep talking about adult matters in the eyes of the court is what, Mum? What's an example of talking about adult matters as opposed to this?
It's a fiction. Adult matters. It's rubbish. It's not a thing. But talking about the proceedings is a thing, right?
Okay.
So you can't talk to them about the court case. And the way Krasi's described how you talk to the child is not rubbishing their other parent either. It's just stating a fact. But these adult matters things, it's a little theme that runs through, and the court will go, what do you mean? Would you talk about sex, buying the house, finances? I don't know, in the dispute earlier.
One of those little tools that they've got that they pull out and go, here you go. Okay, all right, let's get to Phoenix's question. And this is about when the kids side with the controlling parent. And it breaks my heart when I hear these stories and hear from people going through this. Phoenix said, my children are in their early teens and say that I'm not being fair when their dad asks for 50-50 arrangement. He's being the perfect dad since we separated. They don't see the nurturing, caring environment I provide as important to their well-being. They fight me to spend a week with him and a week with me, yet I see that the inconsistency from one house to another is not the best for their upbringing. How can I prevent damage being done to them because he is high-conflict, manipulative and controlling ex? I worry about how my children are growing up and what his manipulation can do to them. Oh, teens, Krasi, that's even harder because they just want to go and do the fun stuff, right?
Absolutely. It's such a common situation that, especially in the early days after the separation, the father who maybe has been very uninvolved for a long period of time suddenly starts acting very considerately, very generously. They may lure kids with gifts or permissiveness, promises, holidays, money, everything. And of course, kids are going to respond to that. Why wouldn't they? In their mind, they've had someone who's barely paid attention and suddenly they're showering them with love and affection. I mean, that's the love bombing that gets people in these relationships in the first place. Of course, they're going to respond to it. And I guess there's always a very small, I know a very small chance that they may step up as a parent finally, because now they have to do more. They have to pay a lot more attention. They have to be more present and actually fight for the affection of the children, especially if they're older and they can vote with their feet. So they have to keep up that appearance. But I think in answering also to the question, you can't really prevent something that hasn't yet occurred. Here we're talking more about the fear, because I know who they are as a person. They're acting all nice to the children, but what if they start doing it in the future? But if they haven't yet, there's nothing you can do to prevent it. You can only respond if and when it does start happening. The reality is the kids are at that age where they will absolutely be more drawn to fun and freedom than to what is being called a safe, nurturing environment, which doesn't mean that one day when they grow up and they look back at what they were provided in the different homes, they will not be able to really appreciate what has been provided to them. And if things really start going pear-shaped in the other home and that kind of lovely period ends, if they're a bit older and they're in their teens, they can really vote with their feet at that point. You can have more mature conversations as well. Living arrangements can change if it's not working out, I think, at that age. So I would just say, hold on, see how things are going, and have trust that your kids will figure it out if it really starts going bad.
If it's fake, they can't keep it up. I honestly believe they can't keep it up forever.
No, and they don't.
No, they don't even in the witness box.
And it's heartbreaking. Oh, really? What do they do in the witness box?
They can't do it. Because when they say something in the witness box about what they've been doing with the children, it's inauthentic, and put it all together and then you can see a pattern. And when you can look at it, what was in the past, they seldom have an excuse for why they weren't more involved. And in the witness box, it just shows they just can't stop being motivated by something other than the best interests of the children.
And I guess with teens, if they can walk and leave you and go to the other parent's house, the good news is they can walk and leave the other parent and come back to you. So I think it's really important to leave that door open, let them know they're loved, let them know that they are always welcome and that you're going to be there for them, even when they're treating you like you're the devil. And they will. If you've got the kind of ex that you had to leave, I don't think they're going to cope for very long either. So that's horrible, though. That you've got to hold on to that hope, like Krasi said.
Yeah, and that age, Laura, that 13, 14 age where they can vote with their feet, they're also quite aware of what's going on. And they will more often than not go to when they start being challenging in their behaviours and the relationship gets a bit rocky with the narcissist, they'll go back to the other person and they will normally refuse to see. I've seen it over the years. It's not a psychological thing. I've just seen it over the years. They go, no, we're done.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about talking to your kids and helping them heal. So first question is from Eliza. I have told my husband I want a divorce. He's very angry and tells me we need to talk to our kids, all teenagers, as soon as possible because he wants them to know the truth. I would like to hear advice on how to talk to the kids, especially when one parent wants the divorce.
I think clearly in this situation, we can hear that he's pushing for a move that's not really driven by what's in the best interest of the children, but really a selfish desire to just set you up as the bad parent and then get all the anger and all the upset that the children will probably have at the announcement directed at the mother. But at the same time, it is an inevitable conversation. It's going to happen, whether it's going to happen tomorrow or in a few weeks' time. So I think in this particular situation, given what he's setting up, it's actually better to have the conversation sooner rather than later, because he's probably going to, in the meantime, start saying some damaging stuff to the kids anyway. He's showing that he'll do it. But I do want to also reassure Eliza that it is very often that it's only one person who wants to exit a relationship anyway. It's not that common that both people at the same time make up their mind that it's time to end it. Very often it is just one person. That doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't mean, that you're doing something wrong. So I would say to Eliza to really have a good think about what she wants to tell the children about her decision and be able to own that decision. It is okay to express this clearly as your own decision, not a joint decision. If he is not going to be a part of that and he's not going to come to the table so we can both announce it in a mature, grown-up way, then at least you can do that from your own perspective. You don't have to, of course, go into explanations as to why you're unhappy when what they're doing to you. They're absolutely child-appropriate ways to explain your reasons. So, for example, you can say something like, I haven't felt happy in this relationship for a long time now. Or I have really thought long and hard about this decision and I realize it's very hard for you, but I still need to make it.
Yes.
Or we will both try and keep things as consistent as possible for you as we are navigating this change, and nothing really will change in your lives, and we'll do the best to maintain that. So those are things you can say to the children. So I would just say, even if the kids are angry or upset by the change, and that's a normal reaction. I mean, I would be expecting that anyway. They will come to accept and understand it. So clear communication, own that decision, speak to them.
We do hear it all the time, don't we, Mum? They say, we've got to tell the kids, How are we going to tell the kids? And then they go and tell them before anyway.
Yeah.
Your mother or your father's done this and this is what.
Oh, my goodness.
So if you do have a manipulative or controlling ex or a coercive controlling or a high conflict and they start to make these noises and you think, hang on, they may talk to the kids first. It might be, if you think it's in the best interest of your kids to tell them first, then you can. One of the things I saw recently on TikTok, which isn't a psychologist, as Krasi and I were talking about, there's not enough psychologists on TikTok, so I'm getting my advice from people who are not qualified. But they said, ask yourself, if your ex and you were saying, we've got to tell the children this, ask yourself, who benefits from telling the children this? Do the children benefit from being told this information, or does your ex benefit from it? And if it's just your ex that benefits from it, why tell the kids? Because the kids are meant to be put above everybody else. But obviously, you've got to tell them you're breaking up. So
yes, but you don't have to do it together, and you don't have to be set up. And that's one of the things.
No one told me that. No one told me that.
And one of the things that comes out in the witness box is, did you do this to tell the children? Yes. Well, why would you tell a 6-year-old that? Oh, they're old enough. They have the right to know the truth. And that sort of thing is just like a mic drop moment in the witness box. And
that key word, they're very mature for a 5-year-old, is a red flag to a bull in family court.
It is.
It's a 5-year-old. They're not mature. They're 5. Yeah.
And even if they're older, it's devastating when your parents split up. So they don't have to know the ins and outs. They're not interested. Yeah. And the kids, if they're at school, that when you tell them, they will be shocked, I suspect, but they'll go to school and talk to their classmates. And there will be other children who've been through it and who can give them a sense of normality.
Yeah. And show that one with one last sentence. The children don't really need to know why you're separating. They only really need to know what that means for them. So this is the part you want to emphasize. This is what it means for you. This is what's not changing. That's what you want to focus when announcing it.
I told my kids, you get double birthday presents. You'll get double Christmas presents. I was like trying to think of all the positives that I could possibly think of to make them excited. And then in the end, they'd all had friends gone through divorce anyway. So they all knew what was coming. They all knew what to expect. Yeah.
I promised you pink curtains in your bedroom, Laura.
There you go. All right.
That's all she focused on.
Pink. So Mama of 2 asks Krasi, how do you deal with a coercive controlling person and your kids post-separation? Regarding the manipulation of their thoughts, their wishes and their feelings, how do you prevent the chipping away until they conform to his side? How do you teach them to see it or have strong enough thoughts that they can withstand it? And are there any good books they can read? I realised writing this that I couldn't do these things, so I feel all hope is lost in this area. Or Mama of 2. So I guess, Krasi, you've already addressed that whole helping them side of things, but do you have any book recommendations that Mama of 2 could have a read?
I absolutely do. But first, I want to again repeat that very often you cannot prevent what the other parent is doing, but what you do as a safe parent also has a very strong cumulative and lasting effect. So for every chip away that they are causing the children, everything good that you're doing for them, it also fills their cup. It's like drop, drop, drop that fills the cup as well, and it repairs the harm. So it's absolutely not all hope is lost, and it does matter very significantly what you do. But there are plenty of great books particularly for children between kind of the years of 3 and 10. I mean, I don't think you're going to get very far with all the children and books in that way. I love books. I think they can be so helpful, not just to the children, but also to the parents, and help the parents develop a language that is child appropriate. I remember when during COVID, and one of my sons, he was 8 at the time, and he started developing quite a bit of anxiety, which he'd never had before. And I could see it, but even as a psychologist, I actually didn't know how to talk to him as a child, because all my strategies were for adults and they weren't really going to be appropriate. So I ended up researching and buying this really amazing book, which is called The Big Bag of Worries. And we started reading it together. And the idea of the book really was about this child that is carrying this invisible bag, and it just grows heavier and heavier every day, and they can barely walk with it. And then one day, a lovely Nana neighbor is able to see that bag, and she says, "Come here and we can start having a look, and just let's see what's in your big bag of worries." And then they start taking out the worries one by one. "Oh, but that doesn't belong to you. That belongs to your parents. You don't need to carry that." Oh. Or then look at another worry and say, "Oh, that's not really a worry at all. We can put that aside."
That's such a beautiful story.
But it was, I wouldn't have had the language to talk like that about it, but it gave us the language, and it really helped at the time. So I think books can be an amazing tool for parents. I'll tell you a few ones, but also I have put a little sheet that I'm going to pass on to you, Laura, and then we can put it in the show notes as well with these recommendations. There is a book called Every Moment of Every Day by Krasi Kirova. I do want to point out, Krasi Kirova is this amazing American therapist that specializes in supporting protective parents. And this is the book she has written about children who are going through shared custody arrangements and how to support them during the handovers. So really good book. There is another book which is called The Sky is Red, and it teaches children to trust themselves, build self-esteem, and the best ways to protect themselves from manipulation and peer pressure. So that's a really good one. By Tyra Schwartz. She's got another very good popular book, which is called My Boundary Balloons. So that teaches about 3 different kinds of boundaries that children can establish. So that's really nice. I do want to highlight another book, which is called I Can by Natasha Harris. I'll actually put it up here, and I'll tell you why I'm showing it. Because Natasha Harris, she's a Melbourne-based writer, and I know her personally. And I know the story behind the book and why she's written it. And it's the book she wanted to read to her own children to help them go through what they're going through. So I really highly recommend it. It's available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a list of these books in the show notes.
Okay.
But I just want to finish as well and just address that last sentence in the question, because it really, I think, goes into our hearts as we hear it. That idea of, I couldn't do these things, so I feel all hope is lost. So as we're doing this episode, I really want to take the opportunity to say something to Mom of Two and also all the other parents who have written in the questions we're answering today, who are listening, and who I know are trying their best to get through a very awful, unfair, and difficult situation, all the while protecting their children from more harm. You are amazing. To all those parents, you are the unsung heroes. You have been through the trenches, and you still keep going, and you're doing everything in the name of those kids. I know you, and I see you. I know what you're going through. We all do. We all do what we do for you. And the constant thoughts about what this will do to my children and how it will impact them as they grow up, why I can't do more for them and why I can't keep them safe, all those sleepless nights and the exhaustions you carry because of the work you do. And I know they haven't heard it as much, especially from outside people or from professionals who really are supposed to help and assist. But please know it's not your fault, and it was never responsibility that you need to carry. What is being done to you and your children is the choice of someone else, and they carry the responsibility. It's not yours. And one day, I think you'll see and you know what you have been able to do for your children, and they'll know it as well, and they will thank you for it.
Wow. Mic drop.
So
Let's embroider that on a cushion, that entire paragraph of words. Krasi, thank you for saying that, because I don't think people hear it enough, particularly if they're going through coercive control family court and they're dealing with professionals who are analysing their parenting and they're questioning everything about them, as pulling them apart and saying what's bad and why aren't you good enough and what are you doing wrong, the accusations that come flying for these people. No one's saying it. So thank you, Krasi, for saying that and acknowledging that.
it needs to be said, and I repeat it over and over again. We're heroes.
You are,
Yes.
because you're still getting out of it yourself, but you've put your pain aside to focus on the children, and I love.
And you're probably also going through family court. So you're doing the two probably hardest things I can possibly think of, plus divorcing your ex, all of that, all at once. Let's get to Sam's question, though. How can I help my kids to heal from coercive, controlling relationship with their father? The relationship lasted for years and involved lots of coercive control, increasing over time. How to help the kids, a teen and a preteen, who are dealing with severe trauma-related issues. They're both seeing psychologists, but are very reluctant to open up, as it was always known that nothing that happened within the house should be discussed with people outside our family. The kids are very forthcoming with me, the mum, but have blatantly said they don't feel comfortable talking with other people. They're also afraid if their dad would find out what they have said. I'm trying to create stability and security for them, but it's been exhausting. We have no parenting orders yet. My ex has been unwilling to sell property so far, and he has not been in contact for some years. Also, how do I prove the coercive control that has occurred mostly behind doors, if and when we ever end up in court for parenting? And yes, I am trying to take care of myself, and I do have a counsellor. Thanks for asking.
It's lovely, yeah.
Big question there,
she's
Krasi.
put a smiley face at the end of the question as well. So thank you for letting us know, because it reassures me to know that you're also getting support. But I have to say to Sam, it's actually perfectly fine and okay that the children are not opening up yet to others, including to their psychologist. I mean, trust and that feeling of safety can take a really long time to develop. In many ways, their silence is a protective strategy, and so no wonder they're still using it as such. But the fact that they're sharing with you and they're opening up with you, that is the most important factor there. They can keep the strategy up to other people, but they're sharing with the person that matters. And I think over time, as they feel more safe and more trust is developed, they will probably start opening up. But also, sharing is not necessarily so important in that process of healing. I know it is exhausting to be both a parent and a trauma specialist to your children all at the same time. I think this is what Sam is talking about. And I do want to reassure what we know from research on trauma as well is that there are two most important factors that are predictive for recovery. So one is the presence of social support, and two is active coping strategies. When people have these things, then they are well on a journey to recovery. And as you can see, both of them are not necessarily only parent dependent. So the social support they're going to get from a lot of other places, and their active coping strategies they're probably also developing in their therapy as well. So I think your children are going to cope over time. And there are many other helping factors outside of one's parenting. So their social connections and friendships, their belonging in school, their sports, the hobbies that they are playing, their siblings, their health. All of these are also going to be part of that recovery. It doesn't all just fall on the parent solely. And I think sometimes people forget that. So again, Sam, you're doing amazing work, and it will absolutely be paying off. Obviously, once the thread is fully over and you don't have to worry about family court, it will be easier, but you're already doing amazing, and maybe you never have to go through family court if you're lucky.
I heard someone explain to me once that, sometimes when people are healing, you can't actually see it, and to think of it like an oak tree. The seed is in the ground, and actually before the oak tree grows up to a big tree, there's heaps of root work underneath. There's roots going everywhere. You can't see any of that. And then once all those roots are down, it grows into a massive big tree. So Sam, you probably are helping them build those roots so that they can be that big oak tree. So it's just that you can't see it yet, hun. So I think you've got to remind yourself they're building their roots, and you can't be a big oak tree without a heap of roots, right? So it's good. I'm sure I've completely butchered that analogy. All right. So Mum, let's get into the legal side, and we have run way over time. So, but I'm sure no one cares. I hope are you okay to stay, Krasi?
Let's keep going.
Okay. All right, so these are some questions around the parenting arrangements and the legal side of things with a coercive controlling person. Now, just a reminder, Mum is a family law accredited specialist in Australia. She doesn't operate in WA, has its own family court. So some of this is going to differ. So please always get your own individual legal advice. This is not legal advice. This is just general education discussion. Mum is not your lawyer, okay? I'm not a lawyer and Krasi's not a lawyer. She's a psychologist. I'm just a
But
rando.
she's not your psychologist.
She's not your psychologist.
Yep.
So let's get into some of these questions though, Mum, because it is a big pickle. So Beth's question, how should I approach setting up a parenting plan with a narcissistic ex? We currently have 50-50 as a verbal arrangement, but I want more time with the children for their stability. What can I do to make this happen and as smoothly as possible, given that they're high conflict and avoidant tactics?
Well, as a tactic, if you've got a parenting plan, you've got a verbal arrangement of 50-50. Once you put that in writing as a written parenting plan, then it's a lot harder to change, but you haven't put anything in writing. So I'd be looking for the gradual increase of time. Perhaps be the person available when your ex can't mind them for the night, or just gradually move in a very slow way to slowly take a bit of extra time to you. Because they're high conflict, they're going to want it in writing, and so they can secure it. But if you've got a father who is not going to be the best for the children, you won't know until they've been having week about, and now you're thinking that's not really good for the children. You don't want to be looking in and predicting whether 6-8 is going to be good for the children or whatever. So I wouldn't be locking it in yet until you can see how the kids go.
So what you're saying, Mum, is keep testing it, seeing how they go. If they are a narcissistic person, they are going to say, I'm going away on a holiday next week, so you have to have the children. But the problem, I guess, with not having a written down parenting plan or a consent order with these kinds of people is that they're going to change the rules on you all the time. So you've just got to keep in the back of your head, Beth, that you do probably at some point need to have something written down to stop their shenanigans, which maybe you haven't experienced yet. But Mum, what you're saying is don't lock anything in permanently through the court or anything, because you may find that things are going to change.
And I can tell there's stuff changing. So wait until it gets to something that is reasonable. And then when the children are happy, when you put it forward as a written document or a mediation proposal, the other person then can't say, oh, but 50-50 has been going on a long time. So what I'm saying, make yourself really available so that in reality, you're having closer to the time you want. And it is hard to drop everything and take the children, but I suggest take every opportunity you get.
And Beth, document it. So if they miss picking them up on the weekend or if they miss picking them up from school, put it all in there every time you've had to step in to do that so that it shows that it just can't be 50-50. And that documentation will back you up if they fight doing that later. All right, let's get to Alana's question. She says, what specific clauses should you have in final orders for a coercively controlling parent who loves to exploit loopholes and will argue every point on a technicality? E.g., we had an order saying the changeover location should be 20 minutes within the children's school. But as agreed between the parties, I proposed somewhere child-focused and halfway. He refused to agree, but didn't provide any other remotely viable options. I now know that we need defaults for any clause that says as agreed, and I'm looking for more specific examples like this.
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
So most orders in the court start off with, for children's matters, that the children shall spend time with the parents as agreed between the parties, but in the absence of agreement, these are the arrangements, right? And so I think that when you've got someone who's high conflict and smarty pants, what you need to do is say the place, right? And suggested an actual place that was convenient between you both, and then say, and it's usually a McDonald's, they're going to change over at the park or change over at McDonald's, the one on this street and this street. So precision is the key. And they will find loopholes. And I think not acting in the spirit of the orders is part of what coercively controlling people will do. They will go line by line. So, yes, I do remember that case where they were to change over at Hungry Jack's or something. It closed down and the woman didn't see the children again for about 3 months while she went to court because it said change over at Hungry Jack's.
We actually have a really good episode, Alana, called Loopholes to watch out for in family court, in consent orders. There's loopholes that narcissists will exploit, and we go through them with a fine-tooth comb in 40-minute episodes. So go and listen to that episode. I'll put that in the show notes for you. But I think if anybody else is listening, other than Alana, what she's pointed out here is make sure if your orders say, as agreed by the parties, if you know that you can't agree to anything with your ex or they're going to try and change things all the time, as agreed means you both have to agree. So it's a tricky one. So make sure it's specific, and that includes times. What happens if the person doesn't show up?
Yeah.
What happens if the person, so all these things
How long
you
do you
need to
have to
think
wait?
about. Yes.
Yeah. The best way when you cobble together the orders, and I think the ones we have are quite intense and specific, but you do need to go and see a lawyer once you've put them all together to make sure that they say what you think they say, because when you read orders, you know what you mean. But if it's going to have to be interpreted by a third person, if you end up in court, you need to know that it says what you want.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go to Daisy's question. I left a coercively controlling relationship last year with my children. At the beginning, my youngest, who is 14, considered spending time at his dad's place but not living there. Now, after seeing no effort to change him and blaming everything on our emotion deregulation, my youngest also barely wants to see him. Will the court listen to him given he's 14? I think my older kids will be okay. I'm worried my son will still have to see him against his will. My other question is, could he use parental alienation against me in these circumstances? I really worry. I know he documents everything.
Well, is that for me, Laura? For me?
Yes, Mother.
Yes. So you can stop worrying. Our 14-year-old's views are very relevant in the court, and the fact that the two older siblings have also stopped going or not having time with him means that is their lived experience with the father. And so alienation is not at play here. These children, and at 14, these children are making up their own minds, and it's not that you stopped them. So you'll be fine. Parental alienation hasn't got much runway in the court lately, and there are people who are really upset with the court for that. But alienation is the first resort, I reckon, of someone who's damaged the children or damaged the relationship with their children and won't take responsibility.
Look, and I am going to say I have seen some kids who, through coercive control, feel pressured to stay with one parent over the other. I see that. I do. I don't think it's alienation, perhaps, but I think the coercive control and manipulation, this can occur. We're not saying it doesn't happen, but there is no such thing in the psychological terms of parental alienation. Is there, Krasi?
Well, there is a whole report by the UN specifically on the inappropriate use and the lack of any scientific evidence for parental alienation as a term. Like, they've been very critical about it, and you can read. It's a whole big report, and it's a very bogus term that has, like I say, no scientific backing. It came out, I'm not going to get into the history of the person who came up with it, but it's a pretty awful history if anyone wants to hear it. So no, as a psychological concept, it bears no validity.
I do, however, know we have listeners, and we've already talked about some where the children have been coerced into staying because maybe the ex has said, if you don't, I might not be here next time, or, all the horrible things they do say. That's a different situation.
Well, that's influencing, manipulation and all of it. And we talked about why children especially could be very pliable and amenable to it, because they feel that loyalty bind. They're intentionally put into that bind. They are made to make these decisions as if it's all on them, and they're going to cause such huge harm to this poor parent if they don't really do everything in their power to take care of them. But again, these relationships are not static. What is the relationship at one point in time doesn't mean that in a few years' time it cannot change completely.
The Family Law Act used to say that at 14, the children's wishes, basically the deciding factor, right? They took that number out of the Family Law Act because what was happening was people were pressuring a child as they grew to be 14 to make a decision. But really, 14 was in the legislation. And as one of the judges said one day, perhaps we should remember that. So you are fine with your 14-year-old. Please don't worry anymore.
If you want to listen to any more about how children's thoughts are considered in the family court, we have an episode on that you can go and listen to. I will put that in the show notes as well.
On the age of 14, as a psychologist, can I put also a remark there that around that age is also when children can seek psychological support, even if they don't have the explicit agreement from both parties, because then there's what's called the Gillick test that is being applied to evaluate where the child has enough maturity and capacity to be making that decision. So yes, around that time, they can also be seeing someone for support.
Even if their ex says no, which seems to be a coercively controlling trait in a lot of them. Sarah's question, Mum, my ex has decided suddenly that he wants to go from seeing our children a couple of hours a week to having 50-50 care of them. He has got his own place now and showed it to the kids, telling them that they will now have sleepovers for 7 days. And I had no idea until the children told me. With the lawyer's support, due to multiple safety factors, the children did not have in-person time with him until mediation. At mediation, he refused to budge from 50-50 position and denied all my safety concerns. Our mediator recommended I immediately apply for parenting orders and allow only supervised contact. Since then, every phone call, he immediately says to the children, if you want to see me this weekend, you can come for a sleepover, just ask Mummy. They are getting confused and distressed and now no longer want to talk to him on the phone as he continues asking them if they want to see him despite my numerous text messages and emails explaining that it's distressing the children. Is it better to recount these events in the initiating affidavit or timeline? And what phrasing would help describe the coercive control that he is using with the children? Now, I'm just going to add, Mum is not giving legal advice here. No. We're just talking about what happens in these kind of situations. Mum, what have you got to say?
So generally, I wouldn't call it coercive control. I would explain the actions that have been happening and allow the court to draw their own conclusions. And I don't know what state you live in, but if you were to record the children talking to their father, and you obviously can tell, you can hear it, you know what's being said from the other side, that technically you're not allowed to record a conversation between two people other than yourself in most instances. But the family court can waive the rules of evidence, Commonwealth rules of evidence, and it would be a good way to have it there to say, I recorded it once, and this is what he said. Because once would be enough for a court to really be thinking about whether those phone calls are of any benefit at all to the children, and maybe that might stop them being able to have the children. Because when they're in supervised situation for time with their father, someone's listening and watching, right? And they don't get the opportunity to have a little sneaky conversation with the kids. So maybe no phone.
All right. Now, this is our last question. This is from Karma. And she says, I am only out of a decade-long abusive marriage with coercive control and manipulation. I had to finally obtain a 3-year IVO, which is a protection order, and move out with my young children. He is now seeing them weekly via supervised visits and, of course, acting so compliantly and calm, which is honestly unnerving. I feel so uneasy and concerned about the road ahead because I don't trust him, particularly when he starts having unsupervised visits with the children. He is continuing to financially abuse us by not contributing or paying child support. I do feel so many emotions after years of control and abuse that I need to know how to best manage this situation. So, Mum, let's start with you, and then, Krasi, we might hop to you for this.
So if there is supervised time and he is behaving himself, then that is evidence that supervised time is working. It's not evidence that he should be able to move on to unsupervised time without there being anything other than now it's the next step. And the court has said they've got no problem with making orders that the children have no contact with a person who is dangerous to them. And there was a thing where we wouldn't want to make supervision orders for long term, but the courts do sometimes. So I think at this point, don't feel impelled or compelled to go on to graduating unsupervised overnight in days week. No, I think the court has to take your ex as they find him and the kids as they find them. And behaving in a contact centre just proves that he knows what not to do, that he chooses to do it when no one's looking.
So you're saying, Mum, you don't have to magically go from supervised to unsupervised. You
God,
can,
no.
if they
Yeah.
are unsafe and they've done things that are really bad
Yeah.
and the kids aren't safe, unsupervised, moving to unsupervised, you don't have to do that.
Yep. And since the amendments to the legislation, the court now, it says the court must consider family violence. And it didn't used to say that. And so that, as long as you've got that sort of evidence before the court, all of the behaviours post that are really a little bit irrelevant because they're not changing forever.
Okay. All right. Krasi, have you got anything that you'd like to say in regards to Karma's question?
Yeah, I think just following up on what Lynn was saying is there is a very common situation, and that kind of performing well under supervision or when you know that you're in the spotlight, it is a part of their strategy as well, and it's very common. And it can be so destabilizing for the victim survivor because it's not what necessarily the ex is doing, it's what they know they're capable of doing. That's where the threat and the risk lies. That often doesn't get seen by outsiders. And it makes complete sense to remain vigilant in this situation. I mean, to a person who is a survivor of trauma, calmness does not feel safe. In fact, it feels like the calm before the storm. So the more of a reason to stay vigilant in that situation. And it takes a long time for a sense of safety to start developing and building. So in this case, it is going to take quite a bit of time. Obviously, there's so many supports nowadays that exist, and hopefully Karma can access and doesn't have to walk this journey alone as what is going to happen next. And I just hope everything we already spoke about today, we did discuss a lot of the issues of what the question really is about, will give Karma some sense of how much she can already do as a protective parent.
Yeah. I think it's important, guys, that if you have listened to this and you're feeling not great, you can call Lifeline 13 11 14. If you are listening to this and you suddenly realized you're experiencing coercive control, you can call 1-800-RESPECT and have a chat to someone. And so I've literally heard people call up and go, I just want to ask, is this not good? Is this bad? Is this coercive control? You can just ask that one question anonymously and someone will give you some feedback. And sometimes that's all it takes, just to get some feedback from someone outside your bubble. So please, if you need to, those support processes are there. Also, we've got the episodes that we've already done in this coercive control 6-part series you can go and listen to. Is it coercive control, financial abuse, living under one roof? And we have 2 more episodes coming up. The next one will be proving it, and the one after that will be healing. They're the next 2 episodes we're coming. So if you haven't subscribed to us yet, please make sure you do that so you get notified of the next episodes that are coming along. Mum and Krasi, thank you so much for sharing your amazing knowledge. You've educated me on so many things that I didn't know about, which is going to make it easier for me to help others as well. But also, I'm sure you've educated and helped so many people today just by sharing your time with us, an hour and a half of your time with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Krasi.
And again, if you want to find any more information about Krasi, we'll put her website in the show notes as well. And also, Krasi, just before we go, we've been saying it in all of these episodes, there is a form that we would love you to fill out. And how, Krasi, will that help? Tell us what it is.
Yes, so if anyone hopefully still listening to this part of our episode today, I do want to encourage any listeners who have experienced coercive control and who have come across therapists, psychologists, people who have either supported or done assessment work for them during this process. Please pass on your feedback, pass on what your experience has been, what has been helpful, what has not been helpful, what would you like professionals to know about it? Because I'm going to be speaking on a national psychology conference on the topic of coercive control, and I really want to make sure that the experiences of real people are getting passed on and are going to be used in our training going forward. So if you have the time and you have something you want to say, please use the form that Laura mentioned and tell me so I can make sure it gets passed on.
Wonderful. And if you are subscribed to our newsletter, if you have subscribed to our email, you will receive that link as well there, and also many helpful worksheets and information that we hand along to help you. So big hugs to everyone who's going through. As Krasi said, you are a hero to us and to your children, I'm sure. And if they haven't figured it out yet, they will when they're older. So thank you for listening and trusting us with your stories and questions. And thank you, Krasi and Mum, for your time. And we will see you all here next week.
Thank
Bye.
you, Rosie. Bye-bye, Laura. Bye, Krasi. Thank you.
Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.